Valeri Nichushkin has spoken about what he says happened in Seattle, the infamous incident, call it 15 months ago now. But it's a weird timed interview too, Zach, because we have to remember this. This interview was filmed by a Russian YouTuber before the NHL playoffs, so before he got suspended, strike 3, phase 3 of the program. Let's remember, though, we only thought he was in phase 1 of the program at that point in time.
Right.
When he left the team for 2 months during the regular season this year to go to rehab. Turned out he was actually in phase 2 because phase 1 was what happened in Seattle. I'm not so sure Valeri Nichushkin knew we were ever going to find out that he was in the second phase, and we could poke holes in this as we get into what he said and told this YouTuber.
I want to call a 30-second timeout. In the last segment, I used the phrase apex predator, but then said, hey, orcas are actually the apex predator. They've been destroying great white sharks around the world and sucking their liver out. You said, hey, not up to speed with this. You watched a video of a orca just absolutely just running up on a great white shark, knocking him into the next universe, and sucking his liver out simultaneously. What did you make of that video?
I think they're the apex. I think you're right. Man, it just goes to show you that humans may be most scared of sharks, but I wouldn't want to end up in the ocean with a killer whale.
No, I wouldn't want to end up with either of them, but those livers are hundreds of pounds. And they're filled with oil and they're fat, and the orcas love them.
I mean, it's basically like if dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Yes.
That's kind of what these things are.
Correct.
This is what a Tyrannosaurus Rex would do to an elephant.
Yes, well said. And a blue whale is as big as any dinosaur that ever did walk the earth. You're talking about and a blue whale, you're talking like 3 city buses consecutively. A blue whale's tongue weighs as much as a car. You know, the largest artery of a blue whale, you can fit a small human in the artery. It's insane.
So should it be called Orca Week from now on instead of Shark Week?
I think there's just do supplement it. Make us separate. Don't do away with Shark Week because it's fascinating. But the orcas, man, they're like a gang. All right. I want to get to the Val stuff here in 10 seconds. Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan is holding a youth football camp on July 13th at All City Stadium at Denver South High School. Ages 8 to 12 is completely sold out, but we do still have some room left for ages 13 to 17. Philip Lindsay and several coaches from Denver South, as well as various Denver Sports personalities, will be in attendance to share their knowledge. Head to denversports.com/camp to register. And we would like to give a big thank you to King Soopers for their support of this camp. Every penny here is going to benefit Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Colorado. Okay. Moving on from the orca talk and getting back to this Val Nichushkin situation. So we're talking about Val today because apparently right before the playoffs started, Val did this interview with a Russian YouTuber, Mikhail Cherkasov, and he was in Denver. He was in the Avs locker room, this YouTuber. And so this was, to your point, after he was placed in stage 2 of the player assistance during the season, but before the playoffs started, and he was eventually placed in phase 3.
Correct. And at the time, we thought what happened during the regular season was phase 1 because we were never told that phase 1 was actually the Seattle incident, when it turns out that was phase 1, the regular season was phase 2, and what happened against Dallas was phase 3.
Okay. So I am going to read most of this quote from Val. It's a longer quote than I would like for Sports Talk Radio, but in fairness to Val, I want him to be able to say what he said so we can have the full conversation with transparency. He said, quote, it was the most difficult season. He was asked about the Seattle season and what happened in Seattle. Val said, quote, it was the most difficult season. There were a lot of injuries in the team all season. I missed 2 months due to bursitis. I also had a shoulder injury, which consistently bothered me. I've always had problems sleeping, but because of the pain in my shoulder, the situation with my sleep got worse. They did an MRI, and they couldn't decide whether to have surgery or not. In the end, they decided not to do it and give me injections in my shoulder. These injections stopped helping, and they decided to inject me with another drug. When we flew to Seattle, they decided that I would not play the match due to the shoulder injury because I needed to not bother my shoulder for a while until the drug started working. And everyone on the team knew that I would not play until the end of the round. Nichushkin goes on to say, quote, it put a lot of pressure on the psyche, and it was very annoying. I had friends in Seattle at that moment, and I made the wrong decision. We hung out with them at night, and in the morning, I flew to Denver. This girl in my room had nothing to do with me. The club advised me not to give any comments, and I myself was not emotionally ready to explain all this. This was probably the wrong decision, and it was necessary to tell the whole situation right away so there weren't a bunch of different rumors. If we had made it to the second round, I would have been ready to play, end quote. I know I just threw a lot at you, Will. You can take it wherever you want to here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. First of all, he says his absence was injury-related. And although the NHL is very secretive about injuries, they still do announce when players have lower body injuries or upper body injuries. And it would have been a lot easier for Jared Bednar to say it was an upper body injury. But remember, Bednar said it was a personal situation. He's on the record saying this is not a professional situation, it's a personal situation. I promise you, the headaches and the gray hairs that caused Jared Bednar, it would have been a lot easier to say Val's out, upper body injury. Next question. That would have been a professional situation. So that right there is my number one issue with these comments from Valeri Nichushkin, is your head coach stuck his neck out there time and time again to say it was personal, not professional, and you're telling me it was very professional. It was a shoulder injury that went awry, and I needed a few days off, few games off so the shoulder could heal, and I would have been back in round 2. That's my first beef with it. My second beef with it, claiming he would have played in round 2. No, he was in the program at this point. He would not have been allowed to play in round 2.
Yeah, it's not ideal. This is what we would call revisionist history. You are editing what happened, even to the point where that girl had nothing to do with me. I woke up and I flew back to Denver in the morning. No, that's not true. You didn't appear at open skate. They were wondering where you were. This was not scheduled. This was not planned. This idea that I was never supposed to play in that game. No, that's not true. I'm just going to say it like that. That is a lie. That is a lie. And what you're doing when you are repackaging the truth is it's a bad look for Jared Bednar. Because if I'm covering that team on a day-to-day basis, I'm circling back to Bednar and saying, hey, you said that it was personal, not professional, and Val is contradicting your statements directly. These two things can't live in the same universe. So who do you believe, Bednar or Val Nichushkin?
Bednar, and it's not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close.
Not even close. There are 3 or 4 untruths in here. And it's uncomfortable. And it's certainly uncomfortable to say, but I have known, unfortunately, some addicts in my life, and unfortunately have even lost some here, multiple, since I've been in Denver. And unfortunately, they've been liars. That's what an addict turns you into. And it's not a couple weeks after this is said, he's back, and it's just disappointing. It's just disappointing because even as the playoffs were about to start this year, Val Nichushkin was taking no responsibility for what happened to him and the impact it had on his team the previous year.
Absolutely. And I think what's most disappointing is he didn't think he was going to get caught a third time. Because remember, this interview didn't just happen yesterday. This interview happened in early April.
Yep.
So I think he thought he could lie about it because it wouldn't blow up in his face with us finding out that he was actually in phase 1 of the program for whatever happened in Seattle.
Interesting.
They don't put players in phase 1 of the program for taking injections from team doctors.
No.
They don't.
No.
So that's where this whole thing unravels like pulling a thread.
Yep.
I mean, the whole thing just comes apart right there. Other stuff in here. He says, I just flew back to Denver. Jared Bednar was adamant in April 2023 he was not going to tell the media Valeri Nichushkin's location.
Yeah.
He was just back in Denver getting treatment. We knew where Gabe Landeskog was this whole time.
Correct.
We knew he was in Toronto.
It's not a secret.
It wasn't a secret. NHL coaches are guarded on some things. They're not guarded on simple facts of, his shoulder's beat up, so he's back in Denver. Bednar was protecting Nichushkin because he was taken to some undisclosed location, which we now know was some sort of rehab in phase 1 of the program. So while he gave this answer 2 months ago, this answer blows up in his face even more.
No, you're right.
Based on getting us suspended for 6 months and entering phase 3 against the Dallas Stars and letting the Avs down in the playoffs a second year in a row.
Yeah. And Yeah, he did let the Avs down. He did in such a major way. But the Avs let Val down. And I genuinely believe that. And not directly, because they didn't think that they were doing that at the time. But they enabled the behavior. When they said they went to the room 90 minutes before they ever called 911. I've called 911 twice in my life, and I felt like if I could have done it 10 seconds before, I would have, because you're reacting to an emergency.
It's literally an emergency line.
It's literally an emergency line. So you found an emergency situation, and you waited 90 minutes. And when the cops did show up, Val's nowhere to be found. And, he's whisked away. Think about that. Just think about it fundamentally. You're calling an emergency line because something happened in Val's room that was toxic. And the levels of toxicity is so real. But then when they come, that Val's nowhere to be found, that's not good. And when I went back and I read the entire article again from Seattle, from the Seattle Times this morning, and when the off-duty police officer for the Avs is talking to the on-duty police officer from Seattle that reported to the hotel, there's like this language where he was catching the Seattle officer up on like Val's medical issues. And if that's the case, it's confirming what I've already speculated before, that when it's this bad, it's not brand new. It just doesn't fall out of the sky quite like this. This was on the Avalanche radar, and that's important because the language in the contract says you can get out of the contract when it's this detrimental to the team. And I don't know how it could be more detrimental just hours before a playoff when your season's hanging in the balance and you're talking about that level of debauchery happening hours before a game. That was the moment to do the right thing, and the Avs didn't do the right thing. They did the wrong thing. And now it's they're in bed with it. It enabled Val, and it's just not good all the way around. It's just not good.
No, it's not good at all. And if they could have a time machine, Zach, I promise you they would have cut bait with Valeri Nichushkin after this incident in Seattle. I promise you, because the headaches he has caused again and again since this.
Yes.
And then today, I know he filmed this a couple months ago, but let's call it another headache. Because remember, the Avalanche told the Denver Post they have no comment on this interview. Because what are they going to do? He said, they said, we said. Then it gets into this more web of lies that even though they are right, okay? Even though they are right by probably saying none of this is true, they can't say that.
No.
Because it's safer to protect themselves by doing no comment as opposed to firing back at a guy who's still under contract for 6 more years that, hey, this Russian YouTube interview, all this is balderdash.
Yeah, it is. But here's the other problem. This is a year and a half later since the Seattle incident, and this is the first time Val's ever actually spoke on it. When he came back and didn't even do a press conference, he made the media feel like they were crazy as he stood at his locker and the Avs PR was standing 2 feet away, and it's like, there's nothing here, guys. Like, you're looking for something. There's nothing here. And then, like, during the regular season, he's giving throat slashes to the media in the locker room. Have heard that from multiple sources when he was asked to speak. So you've been totally against speaking on this or about basically anything. He basically banned the media from talking to him all year.
He had the hat trick against Winnipeg in round 1. I was in the room. Hey, can we talk to you? No. Oh, well, he's the star player of the game. The star player of the game usually goes to the podium. Is Val coming to the podium? No. Bro, you just had a hat trick. It's going to be all puppies and roses and Valeri Nichushkin redemption and look how good he is and look how good the Avs are when he comes back. He wouldn't even talk after the hat trick.
Right.
I think that's telling in and of itself, too.
But it's also misplacing the frustration.
Oh, yeah.
You acted like such a way, and now you're making the media the bad guy? The media who hasn't even really challenged you on this, hasn't even really dug into this and what the organization and their role in this? And you're giving throat slashes in between posting yourself with AK-47s looking like a madman the offseason after this happened in Seattle? I'm telling you what, man. The Avalanche have a hell of a player when that guy's healthy. But who he is as a person has crept in, and not even crept in. He has leapt upon this organization, and the organization doesn't have anywhere to turn because of the decision that they made that day in Seattle.
Be nice if you could trade him. You're allowed to. I just don't know if you're going to find a dance partner.